Victorious, a Dvar Torah for Parashat VeZot. You know how when you're counting numbers on car license plates, you find the number 316 after a few days of searching, and then a few minutes after you find it, it appears again on the license plates of the next 4 cars you see? You don't? What, you don't count numbers on license plates? Only I do? So what do you do for fun? Well, never mind. Anyway, that's how I feel now. It all started last week when I heard a lesson about the process Judaic monarchy overgoes from David to Hezekiah. In Midrash Eicha Rabba, David is described as the king who pursued his enemies and didn't return until full victory. Asa as one who sought his enemies but didn't have the strength to fight. Jehoshaphat as a king who no longer had the strength to pursue but raised his voice in song, and Hezekiah who didn't even have the strength to sing. The Midrash sees this as a monarch decline, from an independent and strong king to a king who doesn't even have the strength to pray. I was reminded of this lesson by Rashi in the Parashat. About the verse in the Parashah, "Hear Hashem the voice of Yehudah, Shema Hashem kol Yehudah," Rashi says, the prayer of David and Sholomo, and Asa against the Kushim, and Jehoshaphat against the Ammonites, and Hezekiah against Sennacherib. On the one hand, it was nice to hear Rashi's words and say, hey, I recognize this. Conversely, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember Shlomo starring in the Midrash. For a change, the previous comment is not derived from the usual pettiness that characterizes my writing. The Midrash chose to refer to 4 of the kings of Yehudah who faced wars that could have ended their reign but emerged victorious. Thanks to his father David, Shlomo never had to deal with similar wars. I'm allowed to be surprised by this inclusion with the 4 kings of the Midrash. Before I start examining Rashi's words, let me note that I don't think I'm the first to struggle with Shlomo's presence in Rashi. Rashi himself explains later that with the words "Ve'ezer mitzarav tiyeh" and "be a help against his adversaries," Moshe focuses his prayer on Jehoshaphat, king of Yehudah, in the battle of Ramot Gilad, and Jehoshaphat cried out, and Hashem helped him, which is interesting because this is not Jehoshaphat's battle mentioned in the Midrash. If that's not enough to convince you that Rashi struggled with the first interpretation, he offers another interpretation for the words Shema Hashem kol Yehudah, hear Hashem the voice of Yehudah, that refers to the connection between Yehudah and Shimon at the beginning of Sefer Shoftim. My initial intuition was to continue Rashi's direction from his first alternative interpretation. Perhaps what these kings had in common was not cry during war, but cry or prayer in general. Although the Midrash ended the list of kings with Hezekiah because of his lack of prayer, according to what is told in Sefer Melachim, in Devarim, Hezekiah is also among the prayers. To this list of prayers you can add also Shlomo and Melachim, which is repeated in Devarim, even if he didn't have to deal with war. I couldn't stay with this answer. Beyond my desire to dwell within Midrashic realms, not a sufficient reason for interpretation, but the desire exists, I couldn't help but notice that there were 2 more praying kings in Divrei Yamim. Aviah, who prayed during his war against Yerovam, and Menashe, who prayed to return to the land after being exiled by king of Ashur. Therefore, with a heavy heart, well, not really that heavy, I returned to the Midrash. The description in Midrash Eicha focuses mainly on the war itself. David pursues and strikes, Asa only strikes, Jehoshaphat and his people open with a song and praise, and Hezekiah, well, he's in bed. This description is very logical considering the purpose of the Midrash describing the decline that occurred in fighting, namely the stage of taking responsibility. But Rashi might be focusing on something related but different. When summarizing a war, one can refer to the fighting itself, but one can also refer to its results. The result at the end of Hezekiah's war was that the enemies died. Still, he showed the Babylonians his treasure house. The result at the end of Jehoshaphat's war is that the enemies left him alone. Still, he allied with the house of Achaziah, king of Israel, who did evil. Asa wins and things seem to work until the 35th year of his reign, when he relies on the Aramite king. The average reader could have similarly read David's war's results, i.e. showing how, from the story of Bathsheba, his reign started to falter and decline. Rashi comes out against this reading. The results of David's war, says Rashi, are not David's kingdom. David's war, the same David who pursued his enemies and overtook them, who did not return until they were consumed, conclude with Shlomo's kingdom, reigning over a united people with a united temple under one God. In prayer for the return of the hostages, healing of the wounded, and the elevation of the souls of those killed in the war that began on Simchat Torah a year ago, and among them my beloved and heroic student, Amichai Shimon ben Ishai and Batyan Rubin Hashem Yikom Damo. I am Dovi Holtz, one who loves Tanakh.